I'm Mitch McGinley, founder and CEO of Boutique Fitness Broker.
I'm Kristin Abel, president of Boutique Fitness Broker. So regardless of when you think you want to sell your business, now is the best time to start preparing. The things that you should be doing to prepare your business for sale are what you would do to keep growing your business if you were going to keep it. You definitely want to start looking for ways, if you haven't already, to start to extricate yourself from the business. Entrepreneurs love to dig in and do all the things. Buyers aren't interested in that. They want to be able to step in and know that everything is already being taken care of and handled. So if there's places where you can start to do less, outsource to other people, up-level some of your staff, do that. Speaking of staff, that's so huge as well. You want to make sure you've got key people in key places so that if you were to step away to take a European vacation for 2 weeks, for example, your business is going to run like you want it to run. You are not critical to your business. Of course, your financial statements need to be in order. Make sure you can put your hands on several years worth of financial statements. If you've got outstanding tax returns, go ahead and get those filed. Those are things you can do today so that you're ready to sell in that moment. And one of the most important things to do that sometimes sellers are anxious about for not really good reason is planting seeds. Start to have really organic conversations with your staff, with community members, maybe your studio manager. You never know who in your community may actually be interested in taking over your business from you. We see in this industry probably half the time the perfect buyer for these businesses ends up being someone who the seller already knows or has a connection with. That's the uniqueness of this industry and of these businesses. So don't be afraid to plant the seeds with those people and just kind of let them know, hey, I think in 2 years, 3 years, I might be ready to exit. Is this something you'd be interested in? No one needs to be afraid. It doesn't need to create any pressure. It's just kind of putting the word out there so that it allows the right buyer to maybe come to you when the time is right.
Planning your exit is so important because your business is most often your most valuable asset. And you would never consider cashing in on your largest asset without planning for it. It takes a lot of time. And there's a lot of changes that we can make, especially as it relates to how you file your taxes at the end of the year, or a staffing change that you might need to make and get in a solid position with a new manager before you list your business. And that stuff takes time. Realistically, I mean, we could be talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of a difference in what you're able to get when you sell. And that's worth planning for.
Sellers often ask us, how long is this process going to take? And oftentimes there's a kind of a vision or a hope that they can be out of their business by the end of summer or out of their business by the end of the year. And we like to remind our sellers that it's kind of a long game. It can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to get your business from listing to closing. And we've had a couple of deals that have closed in as quick as 3 or 4 weeks. We've had some where the whole transaction has gone on 18 months or so. And so the important thing for a seller to understand is that when you start this process, be willing to keep your foot on the gas in the business the whole time. Stay focused, stay attentive to keeping the business growing and moving forward, because at any point in that process, if something in your business starts to shift, it can change what's going on with your deal.
I think it's really important to note valuations are opinions and everyone can have one. Honestly, I try not to use the word worth. I feel like it's not up to me to decide what it's worth. It's up to the person who's buying it. We certainly have our own opinions based on our expertise and all the deals that we've done and everything that we've seen actually happen. It's usually a function of profit. We're looking at the financials, we're seeing how much cash flow there is, how much profit there is. And then we're looking at how involved is the owner, how strong is the staff, what's the situation with the lease, where's the rent, where's the location, how's the parking, how's the landlord. There's so many things that kind of fine tune that multiple, but it's usually between 2 to 5 times your trailing 12 months profit. We use the term discretionary earnings. That can add back any personal expenses like meals, travel, continuing education. There are some circumstances where we can add back the owner's pay. It really is important though that the owner's not working day to day in the business in a normal operational role.
What do buyers look for? So often our sellers, entrepreneurs, want there to be value in all of the blood, sweat, and tears that they've put into their businesses and all of the money that they've invested in their franchise perhaps or in their build out. And the truth is, when it comes right down to it, what a buyer is looking for is profit, consistent cash flow. They want to see that you have a stable, trustworthy, loyal staff that will keep running the business when you are no longer the owner. And they want to see that the business is on track for consistent growth, whether it's membership, revenue, attendance, whatever modality it is that you are operating. Your buyers want to see that they can make money, find ways to make more money by running your systems, using your staff, and just making some tweaks. That's the most important thing that buyers are looking for.
What if the buyer needs a loan? Most buyers do need loans. There aren't a lot of people buying these businesses who have millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars in their back pocket that they want to spend to buy this business and then run this business. So loans are a critical piece of making deals happen, and that's a huge part of what we do, is working with the buyer to help them secure a loan from a bank that we work with. So we've got inside access to the progress. We've got a friend inside the bank who's going to help get the loan done. And then, we have to talk about whether it's an SBA loan or a conventional loan, or can the buyer use equity in their home and get a HELOC, or are they going to friends and family and kind of bootstrapping in some way? It's all part of helping buyers secure financing. And it is an enormous part of what we do, and we're really good at it.
I think there was one little part that I'd like to add to that too. A lot of times sellers will when we have that conversation about talking to people in your community, would they be interested? And a lot of times the response is, well, but they're my teachers, they don't have that kind of money. And that gives us an opportunity to let people know, like, there is financing available. And while, to Mitch's point, people don't have $300,000 in their pocket to buy a business, they may have 10% of that, which makes it really easy then to secure the rest of the loan. And so your perfect buyer doesn't have to have all the money. They just have to have a small percentage of it. And it makes getting the right buyer in place so much easier.
When it comes to SBA loans, the way that they're meant to work is the buyer puts 10% down, and then they usually get that 10% back in about 6 or 7 months. And so buying a business can provide much better returns than real estate or investing in the stock market. You're betting on yourself. And if you can put 10% down and get that money back in 6 months, and then just have positive cash flow while you're building equity in a new business that you're growing, you're winning 3 times over.
It is hard to overemphasize how important your lease and the relationship with your landlord is in these types of deals. We certainly want to see, I call it runway, like we want a decent amount of runway on your lease. So if you've got 2 or 3 years left on your lease, that's going to make it a little bit easier when it comes time to have conversations with the landlord about assigning the lease. The challenge with the lease and with the landlords is that it's a third party to these deals who actually has their own interest, which is very different from yours as the seller and very different from the buyer. And so we want to avoid as much as possible coming right up on the end of your lease, where we've given the landlord an awful lot of power to start dictating when or if this deal will close or what a new lease might look like. That's not to say that you can't sell if you're right up on the end. It's just much better to start having those conversations about selling when there's still plenty of time left, so the landlord isn't as critical a component in the process.
No, is the short, simple answer to that. It's a really common question though, and there are scenarios where it can be really helpful to help you get the best offer. And here's what they are. SBA loves it when the seller finances like 5% of the deal. They love that because they trust that the seller is going to be more involved in the transition and more invested in the success going forward. And so if the buyer is short on cash, the seller carrying is another word for financing. The seller carrying 5% means the buyer doesn't have to put that second 5% down. The buyer can put 5% down, the seller can carry 5%, and the bank will pay the rest. And that makes everyone in the deal feel better. So that can be really helpful, and it's low risk because it's only 5%. Another scenario though where it's really common to have more seller financing is if there's more risk or uncertainty in the recent financials and into the future. So if you feel like the business is gonna take off, but the buyer isn't seeing it in the numbers, one of the ways that you can structure a deal is to have something like an earnout, where your future payments are contingent upon the success of the business going into the future. That usually scares most sellers. They don't want to have it be contingent on the success of the business going forward. But that's the double-edged sword. You're either getting what it's worth now based on the numbers now, or you're taking some risk into the future because you believe in it and you're gonna keep helping. And so an earnout is a lot more common in a younger business where there's not as much history. We try to avoid seller financing wherever we can. We always prefer having a bank finance the deal. But if the business isn't super profitable, or it's a young business and you need to get out, seller financing is the last tool in the toolkit that you're always grateful to have.
Your studio is probably not too small to sell. We can sell studios of any size. The more important question is your studio profitable? You can be a very small studio, attendance or membership wise, but be profitable, and that's very interesting to a buyer. Maybe you're a huge operation with several locations, but if you're not profitable, it's going to be more challenging to sell. So as you're thinking about whether or not you can sell, that's what I want you to consider, is not the size of your space or your membership, but what do your numbers look like? What is the profitability of your business? That is the key to your business being sellable.
This is my favorite question. Why should you use a broker? You will walk away with more money. It's that simple. It doesn't cost you anything. You will walk away with more money. We will help you get more money, and we will make some money too. We charge 10% because we add that much value. And I now have the perfect story to prove this. So the last deal that I just closed, I was introduced to this gentleman. His name's Sheetal. He owned 3 Club Pilates units in the Seattle area. He had been trying to sell on his own for like a year and a half, and he had gone through heartache. And he was now one offer on the table. He said, I don't want to lose this offer. I will give you 4 days to get me a better offer. And in those 4 days, I got an offer that saw him walk away with $600,000 more. $600,000 more. And he's thrilled, and it's done, and it all happened, and it only took me 4 days. So this isn't the first time this has happened. This happened before with a yoga studio in St. Louis, where the seller came to me and they said, we've got an offer for X $100,000. And I looked at the numbers and I was like, it's worth so much more than that. You should be getting twice that. And we almost got twice that and still sold it to the same buyer. So that's the kind of value that we add. And the important part here, and this is so important, the number one mistake that I see people make is they only engage with one offer. Leverage comes from having multiple offers. And when you're able to be pickier and say, no, I want this dollar amount with this buyer on these terms, you feel confident because you've got multiple people at the table, and we manage all of that. And there's no reason for you as the seller to try to manage that when it's your baby. It's too close and it's too personal, and we know that feeling because we've done it with our own. But that's what we're there to do, is to protect you from all of that and make sure that when we're done, you are 100% certain that you got the best offer possible from the best buyer and walked away with as much as you possibly could.